I want to welcome our listeners today to episode 21 of In Conversation with Convergence. This is a monthly podcast. We meet with industry experts and we discuss a variety of trends and topics in the asset management industry, and particularly the alternative asset management industry. I have two very distinguished guests today, and I want to welcome Deep Pool Financial Solutions. I've got Roger Woolman, who's the Chief Revenue Officer, and I also read, Roger, you do interesting other things like corporate development and strategic relationships and the like. And I'm also joined by Tom Dillane. And I know Tom is more of a technologist, but Tom is really responsible for product integration at Deep Pool. So I want to welcome you guys. Maybe you both could do a better job than I introducing yourself. And then, obviously, I'd love you to tell our audience a little bit about Deep Pool.
For sure. Thanks, George. When you said you found out some more interesting things about me, I was a little bit worried for a moment, but the nature of the internet, you know. But yeah, thank you. Deep Pool Financial Solutions. So yeah, we've been around for a number of years in different guises. Deep Pool was a rebranding exercise at the end of 2021 of a company called HWM Financial Solutions. But essentially, we are investor servicing specialists. We've been around the hedge fund administration and private equity administration sector for some decades now. In fact, the business was founded by a few guys, including myself, out of the Cayman Islands. We've been fund accountants, so we've got a fund accounting background. And I think part of our remit to clients is not only to provide software solutions, but also expertise, and that's part of what we do. So we're investor servicing specialists and whatever goes along with that in terms of compliance, share register, performance fee calculations and whatnot, right? I'm sure people can hit up a Google or a website if they want to, if they want the sales pitch. That's something else, right? I've been in the industry since I was a young guy, 20-something with a...
You're still a young guy, Roger. You're still a young guy.
Yeah, well, I can see when we're doing these recordings and meetings these days, we get to see an image of ourselves in front of us the whole time, right? So it doesn't always appear to be timeless, put it that way. But yeah, we've been around a while. I've been around a while. We enjoy, a nice position in the market. We tend to lead our sector and category, and we've got a large range of blue chip clients to go with it. But essentially, we're all accountants that started this business, and we hire from the industry. So we've got a deep talent pool as well. And then that starts to give you some idea how we came to that name.
How big's the firm now, Roger? How many people?
Approximately 130 people.
Okay. So you've grown fast the last couple of years.
Yeah, we acquired the assets of our nearest competitor, which was a business called Koja out of the US. Deep Pool are based in Dublin, Ireland, New Jersey, USA, Cayman Islands, and we do our development out of Slovakia. So we're about 130 people in that group. It's probably split sort of 50-50 between developer types and business expertise. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Tom, so tell our group a bit about you and your role.
Well, I suppose the first thing I can say is I came from fund accounting as well, which might be why they took me on. But I've been in the industry over 20 years, and I did start off in a fund accounting role. And then I just followed. I was very interested in technology and got into, deeper into the applications, and became an application manager. And then I moved to another company. I moved to Deutsche Bank maybe 10 years ago, and I set up the analytics department for their fund services business, and again took the application management on. And one of the applications we onboarded was a then HWM application called Mantra, and looked after that. Actually took 2 instances of it on and looked after those for a number of years. And the time came when I thought, I really want to go a bit deeper into this. So an opportunity arose, and I became part of the Deep Pool family. Essentially, I think I was only in the door a wet week when I was told, okay, your email address is changing and your branding's changing. So, I had to get used to answering.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When you say Deutsche Bank, I'll date myself. I was part of Bankers Trust Company when it got bought by Deutsche Bank. So think that's way back. That's in the early 90s.
They buy them and they sell them, George.
So let's talk about 2022, right? We're a month away, concluding. Roger, how would you sum up the year for the business? What were kind of what were the highlights, what were the lowlights, right? Or some of the challenges you'd say you saw in 22 and the good stuff too, right? I want to start with the good stuff, right? And then we'll bridge into 23 a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for us, 2022 was a good year. I guess when you look at how did the year fare, there's an internal version of that and there's an external version of that. Internally, it was our first year as Deeppool, right? I don't want to bang on that horse again, but we rebranded, and it was about consolidating on the acquisition of Koja that we made in the previous year. And this was the first complete year that we had the entire team together. There was a number of key hires that were made at the end of 2021 too, as we bolstered out our executive and our professional teams, account managers, project managers, etc. The businesses were essentially best of breed solutions and developing and supporting software, but to expand, we needed to make more of a scalable business. So we kind of, I guess, proved that model this year. That's what it was about for us, proving that new model, working with these expanded teams. We had to do a lot of work in terms of marketing and sales development work, which is always exciting, making new contacts, expanding the sales pipeline, big part of what I do in terms of the revenue management piece. But we had to put a lot of processes and systems in place to support that business. And spending a lot more time out in the market, speaking with people, just like we are today with you, George, and getting the name about. I think the name of our products, within our core segment for hedge fund administration and alternatives administration, people know our products more than they know the previous company names or the company name now. But a big highlight for me was, getting out to conferences, physical conferences from the beginning of last year. I think actually.
That's what we were in Cayman, that game.
Yeah, exactly. So we were in Cayman. I think that was February. So that was like early on in the year. So great to be out there, attending events. In Ireland, we have events too that we attended, and we're doing the usual kind of thing in terms of exhibiting and sitting on panels and whatnot. But we were away from that virtual world this year, which was great. For our new
it makes a big difference. What did you guys think about kind of the market headwinds in 22, right? How did that impact you? I mean, for some it was an opportunity, right? For others it was a challenge. Where do you guys come out on that?
As you know, we track data very carefully, George, in terms of our clients' data, and a big part of what Tom does is work with the data that you provide, right? So it's extremely useful. But we essentially run as a partnership type model with our clients. So when the clients are growing, our business grows along with them. But we do need to keep an eye on the markets, right? And particularly when we've got asset-based models,
right?
But overall, our clients did very well. They, our clients grew during the period. So, that some of that is about, taking business from competition, growing in general. So it's not necessarily a linear relationship with what we see, in the market.
Well, what's interesting about that point, Roger, is it's all about, when you get into asset-based fees, right? It's all about picking the right horse, right, to ride, right, and we don't get them all. We don't get them all right, but client selection, right, and client acquisition becomes more important than ever, right? And when there are market headwinds, what did you see, Tom? Did you see, to Roger's point, did you just see it pretty much across the board? With a few brilliant exceptions, that your clients fared pretty well in 22?
Yeah, I would say that they did fare pretty well. And from my analysis of data outside of that, similar. I think, I was about to say a really bad pun, but we're focused on hedge to a large degree. And the essence of hedge is to, counteract those headwinds. So, the dramatic news lines that we read of assets falling and money being lost, it didn't transpire to that level in what I've been looking at, and in particular for our clients. And I would say we've got pretty influential clients and people that are doing this a long time, and people that know how to ride these slumps and booms out and take a strategy that lasts for a number of years, and not just wake up in the start of 2022 and go, oh my God, the market's falling apart. It's rather looking at the trend for the past few years, predicting that this is likely to happen with the macroeconomic events, and then counteracting that by the partners they choose, by the investments they choose. So there is stability in that. And as Roger said, between things our clients have done, things we've done, it's been a really good year.
Yeah, good. It's good to hear. So you're turning the corner. What are the big highlights for 23? What's the firm going to be focused on as we kind of head into 23, Roger?
Yeah, I would just probably answer that by, I guess, looking at some of the negatives out of 2022 too, right? We had seen a lot of inflation, right? And particularly wage inflation has been one of the topics this year. I know firms are looking at that. We've seen in the tech space, not really in our tech space, but in I guess the wider tech space, a lot of layoffs in the last couple of months too, right? As people reorganize and whatnot. So, part of our remit, if you like, for taking this year into next year is work with our client firms and partners to ensure that they can manage that headcount cost, right? So we have to up our game and make sure that we're delivering from a technology perspective, right? Because that mitigates to some extent. What we try and do is help businesses to grow without adding headcount in the first instance. That's the basics, isn't it, of automation? But when we've got increasing costs, we've got to look more closely at potentially, consolidating systems, helping clients get more out of what they've already invested into our software, right? Make more of our products, right? Make sure they're squeezing every last benefit out of them, right?
Well, you bring up a good point, because we're seeing kind of that whole war on talent, right? And however you want to call it, even, wage inflation, but even just talent acquisition and people's capacity challenges internally, right? So we're seeing more and more outsourcing of all kinds of things, technology, even people that built, middle and back offices that you would have never thought that asset manager would consider outsourcing it from self-administration or, culturally, something they'd never do. All of a sudden, they're having a hard time keeping pace, especially if they're growing, right, with the kind of talent they need and the capacity and the headcount they need. So, and technology, to your point, I think plays a huge role. So you see that as a continuing opportunity in 23, I would think, right, for your business, right?
Yeah, and I think also you take that concept of outsourcing, you can push the logic a little bit further. You can say, well, we can outsource some of what we do to our clients. We make them self-sufficient, self-servicing, right? And so that's an extension of outsourcing. Have people go onto the internet, onboard themselves as an investor, or they might be a manager and they need to access and run reports or whatever that might be. That self-servicing, self-sufficient digitalization of the experience of the end client is an add-on to that outsourcing concept, right? Where it's not outsourcing per se, but you can extend the logic in that direction, right?
Yeah,
and that's a big focus for us. Digital forms, electronic forms, and e-signatures, digital signatures, married with that self-service model workflow. That's going to be a big part of businesses to differentiate from a competitive standpoint, but also to take the edge off some of the inefficiencies and the costs that are associated with these operating models.
Yeah, no, sounds good. What are some of the variables in the market that are good for your business? I'd be interested in some of the trends or variables that you think are good for Deep Pool.
I'm going to let Tom take that. I think I'll take Tom take that question. Give him a
Sure.
give me a
They're
yeah.
almost everything can be a variable. I think the changing nature of the regulatory requirements is always something that will be an opportunity for us. And, you know, an opportunity for our business, but also to provide value add for our clients. And that, you know, we've got some major events going on in the world this year that, you know, with sanctions and they're highlighted, but they've been there. They've grown for the past. They've really always been there. There have been sanctions and money laundering and things that we were able to deal with, and how that's done changes. So we can't control what regulations are going to come in. We also can't really change how people are going to try and beat them or beat, hiding who the ultimate beneficial owner is. But what we can do is put in the solutions to safeguard businesses and investors for that. So that's, I see things like that as, a variable that we can certainly, look to mitigate any issue it brings to somebody. The variables that I would think about along with that are then, the economic headwinds, but also the opportunities to come out, because, here in Europe, it's really heavy in the media with regard to energy and, the crisis that's bringing. But that's also leading to a real, focus on renewables. And, we're going to see a lot of venture capitalists and private equity funds that are going to take, quite a big stake in investing in that, I would say. And that, again, becomes something that we're the guys with the software for that, that investing. And as Roger alluded to there with regard to forums and letting the investors, get themselves on board it, essentially, we're outsourcing to our clients. They're almost outsourcing to their clients, being the investors, to get that done and, increase their own scalability. And again, that's helps them to capital raise. So I see things like that as opportunity as well, and something that we have to be mindful of. Look at that variable. And another, it's related to it in a way, but portals have grown over the years in terms of what we do. There was a time, if I go back to, say, 15 or so years ago, most admin companies, including our own, had a portal, but it was largely a box check. So when an RFP came in, you could say yes. You really might never use it. And then fast forward a little while, again, the portal may not have been the most usable tool. However, you would roll it out for sales demos as an admin, and it ticked that box. We move along again another few years, and the reporting consumption becomes quite robust in portals, and it's becoming used. And we can name any data visualization tool that can be embedded, and people are consuming their data in that regard. And now we're coming to the case where, okay, there's an uptick again in the usage to actually consume data. So it's a two-way process where investors are onboarding themselves, and they're digitally signing forms, and all this is related to. There's an element of scalability involved, but there's also the cybersecurity element, because a data breach is a pretty serious thing for everyone. From in our business, we're very mindful of that. We've got a range of regulations, but if I think back to my admin days, and you might remember this again in your banking days, George, it really comes down to that we talk about systems, we talk about bad actors, we talk about all these cybersecurity things, but your people are your biggest risk. People,
that's right.
I'm trying to send George his statement, and I'm chatting to Roger, and I somehow aim it at Roger. That's a data breach. So, a portal gives you that advantage again, where you're, rather than a decision every time I'm getting a statement out, it's the one-time setup through your processes, often 4-eyed, and you've mitigated that risk there. So I've probably derailed my own points there to an extent.
You make a good point. The one point up front you made about new regulatory, the regulatory environment, I think is a really, really a good one. And I think about, there's a new SEC Reg 23 being looked at that you guys are probably familiar with, where they're going to require asset managers to really look at their service providers from a little different lens. And it's a great opportunity, say, for a service provider to figure out how, in the advisor and the SEC's eyes, they can be considered a best fit, right? And there's lots of definitions of what best fit would be, but we would say a best fit is the type of business, for example, that a service provider services, right? So I think you make a very good point about people. It's all the perspective you have, and many of these things can be great opportunities, right, for your business. Let's talk about fund administrators. I know that's a very key part of your business. And Roger, maybe just to educate our audience, if you could talk a little bit about that model, I'll call it that distribution model a little bit, and then I'll have some follow-up questions on that. But I want to first just educate our listeners relative to kind of the role Deep Pool plays with fund administrators.
Yeah, I ducked the last question because I knew that some of the opportunities that exist are negative factors for our clients, like regulation and compliance and so on. I thought, I don't want to say that these negative things are positive for us, but there are positive things that happen too in this fund administration world, and a lot of that is about the M&A activity, right? That creates opportunities for us too. And so where do we sit, right? We are essentially, or the core clients for us are hedge fund or alternatives. So when we say alternatives, we need private equity, real estate, infrastructure type administrators. So, typically, depending on which part of the world you're operating in, you may have a requirement for that third-party administrator, which we see over here. We still get the concept also of self-administered funds. So essentially, in terms of, I guess, where our footprint sits, you might call that investor servicing, transfer agency, and we also then have that compliance wrapper that sits around that model. In a typical, say, hedge fund administrator, there might be two key sort of accounting departments, if you like, in between fund accounting, where they're collecting the trades that have been made by the managers and calculating the gross asset value of the fund or an entity. And then systems like ours then start to interact with the investors to collect the capital flows from the investors. So in a hedge fund, subscriptions, redemptions, private equity scenario might be commitments and capital calls in a private equity closed-end fund. And we essentially then pick up those gains and losses from the fund and allocate those into the investor world, work out what the investor's position is, what fees there might be, whether they're performance fees. In the case of private equity, we might be looking at waterfall calculations. But we're doing that ongoing compliance as we go, the fee calculations, the statement of capital, any sort of related notices. So some of it's quite, I guess, bread and butter, if you like. It's not that interesting. It's just core investor record keeping. Where it starts to get interesting is then when we can sort of say, well, okay, for this investor, can we have a single global record from a compliance perspective? Can we operate across multi-jurisdictions? And we've already talked a little bit about the experience of that investor, because ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide our administration clients with a competitive advantage, not just a set of records, right? You're not just trying to you're not just doing the number crunching. They've got to compete for business. I hinted at the beginning of that there's opportunities for us in this market because there's so much M&A activity in the fund admin space. As administrators merge or buy up other businesses, they collect a set of clients, but they also collect some baggage that goes with that book of business.
Right.
Other
and
systems.
Some decisions that have to get made about the new infrastructure.
Yeah. And we have to then help clients say, okay, now you've got all these disparate systems, data sets, and so on and so forth. And part of what we want to do is consolidate those efforts. And, we'll bring a little bit of best practice, but hopefully some cutting edge technology to help do that. So we get opportunities in the nature of our clients too. That's our core business, but with compliance tools, clearly you're going to also have clients that are not fund administrators. They might be law firms. We operate in these fund domiciles or these fund jurisdictions, and there are other regulated businesses that we do business with, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a big market, right? I mean, the last count, there's over 620 fund administrators. There's probably a third of the market in terms of fund count is still self-administered, believe it or not. But not as much hedge as closed end, right? Most hedge, as you guys know, does have a third-party administrator. There's some brilliant exceptions to that, but not as much on the the closed end side's moving in that direction now, like it should. What is kind of, if you had to define the fund administration scenario that works well for you guys, what is it? Right, like if you were a best fit for a fund administrator, what do you see that fund administrator either not concentrating on, not focused on, or kind of trying to kind of up their game, right, relative to their offerings in the market?
I'll let Tom give you a good answer, but I'll give you kind of a weak answer from me first, right? A sitting on the fence answer, right? I'll put my hands up to this one, right? Because we have startup clients that need to grow a business and get to market quickly, but we also have the biggest of the fund admins as our clients. It's a bit of a sales answer I'm giving you, I think, George, right? But
right.
The answer is it suits both ends of the scale, right? And when you look at those 600 odd administrators, clearly a lot of those are very small, right? And so might not have the requirements for our offering or our solution. But as they start to grow or have aspirations to grow and get off of Excel would be a competition for us with those smaller administrators, then clearly we've got something we can do. And, when a client takes our product, they know that the big names out there are using it, so they know it's going to work, right? Yeah. The challenges are different for the larger customers. I think the first question you asked me was one of the first questions was, how big are we? 130 people. And I like to think that we're small enough to be agile and care, but we're big enough to be credible and financially sound, and so we're in a nice position to have those large clients, and that does help us with credibility. But it also we relish the startups as well, right? Or the businesses that are growing, because we've grown with other businesses. We've had other startups come to us. HWM Mantra, Tom mentioned, was launched in 2006. We've had firms that have grown their business on that platform with us, right? And so, sorry for the sales answer there. Tom probably give you something a little bit more educated.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, now I feel pressure. But I think we certainly suit the small and the large, but where I think we come in is that we come from the industry ourselves. I'm many colleagues in Deepwool that worked in admins, so we know the challenges that lie there. I often think that we regularly deal with product people in the admins and people that are considering us. And historically, that was really your coordination, where you'd be in a race with 3 or 4 other solutions providers. And particularly, I think in the smaller cases, that is who you deal with. They may wear another hat if they're really small, but that's who you're dealing with, because they want to look at the functionality, they want to look at the automation. They basically want to see, can they trust your solution for everything they need, not just the jazzy front end. And equally, not just the trade processing, but all those other things like the ongoing due diligence checks of investors, your reminders for when you need to recertify somebody, your reg reporting, so that they know, okay, I can employ this and I don't have to, remember things like I do if I'm using Excel, which can be a competitor in a real small case. That's more of a joke, but the point is that's who we're dealing with. But what I also see then is when we go larger, the COOs become very interested in us, because most COOs are looking for target operating models. And in the current climate, in generally the last 5 or 6 years, the M&A activity has really, got increased. It's very big. I was involved in part of that myself before I came to Deepwool. And you come with disparate systems. You buy a company, you add it to your company, you're likely using different fund accounting and TA systems. Maybe you might have a centralized, screening system, or maybe you don't. But you're instead of a product lead interested in the functionality, what I often see now is the COO, and he's saying, okay, look, I'm setting up, I've got my operations in Dublin, London, New York, where I'm in Luxembourg, maybe with my clients, but I'm building out this office in another location. It could, it can be anywhere, and what they're interested in, is, okay, what way can I have a solution that can be scalable to 3,000-4,000 people? What way can I have something that...
Yeah, and your point about the target operating model, right?
Absolutely.
And what, best practice, right?
Well, I am. And what I'm saying really in that is that an intuitive, well-designed system plays into that, because what you're talking about is a situation where it's the opposite of a small team of SMEs, and we have clients like that where they're very small, they've lots of experience, and they're able to scale out their operation with small number of people using technology. But on the other hand, when we're talking about the very big clients, they're scaling out in another way with lots of people. And to do that, you must have an intuitive process set. And I'm saying intuitive for everything, not just our application, but how it's done. Because you're trying to train hundreds of people at a time how to go through processes. Breaches are impossible. It's just not something you can consider. And to really get the value for your target operating model, it has to be something that you can scale out. So again, why I say that is, that's where your product person isn't your primary conversation anymore. It is really your COO and their delegates who are saying, okay, how am I going to show all of these people how they're able to take an investor from onboarding, transaction statements to offboarding them sometime in the future, and not have to consider how I learn 100 screens or 100 ways to do things.
Well, yeah, listen, your point about intuitive is really spot on, because you're talking, to your point, hundreds of people and thousands in some cases.
Yeah.
You're talking multiple jurisdictions. You're talking multiple languages, right? And you'll never get people trained up, right? If it's not intuitive. The other point you guys make, which I think is interesting, is the pace of M&A, right? It continues, yeah. Right? As you know, we're involved in a lot of it. We've been very instrumental in helping a fair number of the European admins kind of get a foothold here in North America. And then the other thing we're seeing admins do, which is interesting, is they're out buying standalone professional services companies. So they're out buying managed IT, cyber companies, outsourced CCO, compliance and governance companies, because they want to bolt it all on to, they're either buying or they're partnering, right? Where they want to bring a broader solution because people think the advisor has, vendor fatigue, right? They've got to buy 8 things. They've got to buy it from 8 firms, right? And they're trying to make that, as you are, kind of an easier decision. So listen, I like the whole play with admins. And I think the other point you make, guys, that's really good is coming from the industry. That's been a big part of our success is it's not just knowing the data, but it's knowing how your client's going to use it. It's the color, the insights, the narrative, right, that you can put around the product that you give them. It shows them that you understand their business, right, and how they're going to lever your product to continue to support and build their business. So we are starting to run a little low on time. I wanted to get to a couple other quick things. So whoever wants this can take this, or you both can take this. If you guys had to tell our audience, 2 or 3 things they should know about Deep Pool, right? Even though you gave us a nice intro, what would you want to leave our audience with on kind of Deep Pool?
Well, I would say, in terms of educating who are Deep Pool, some of your audience will know the Mantra solution, and some of your audience might know the NSAS solution, which came out of the Koji business. Both these solutions have been around and have evolved in this space, from hedge fund to closed-end private equity coverage. We're in 11 out of the top 20 hedge fund administrators. So they might already know about us. Is my
That's right.
there,
That's
they
good.
perhaps don't know who Deep Paul is, and they may have received a statement from one of our systems or logged into one of our portals, right? But essentially, we brought together the number one and number two systems in that space. Aspirations now are to consolidate on our compliance solutions for AML, KYC, tax reporting for FATCA and CRS, and we are backed by Lovell Minnick Partners since April last year, and so that's a key change in the history of the business.
And we know Lovell Minnick.
Yeah. And that sets us up great for our future endeavours and expansion, and ensures that we've got a good foundation for the next phase of our business and for our next phase of our clients' businesses. Yeah,
sounds good. Tom, anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I'd add is, I suppose we've alluded to it already with regard to our experience in the industry. We have come from admins, and what I think is something I'd like to say is that we that's what our value add is. Apart from our technology, it's we look to partner. So it's not, you'd mentioned there with companies admins buying up, technical companies, managed IT. Where that works well is when that company comes with the business acumen and experience to deliver the technology to meet the business need. Where that does not work well, and with direct experience, and one of the first things I would have said to Roger on joining and the guys was, where it fails is you get these technology experts to come in, but they can bolt anything onto anything, and they'll speak an API almost with fluidity rather than English. They're so technology strong, but they just want you to say, so what happens next? And you've got to talk them through it. So that's, to me, that's the strongest thing I think that we offer, because we speak at an abstract level in terms of what our clients want to move through their requirements, and we keep abreast of it. So that sounds like a real plug there, but I really do mean that genuinely, that we do come from that industry, all of us, and that's what we leverage. I suppose, and we have a natural interest in it.
Yeah, no, it's why it becomes a passion, right? And all right, last thing, I always like our viewers and listeners to know a little bit about you guys, non-work. What do you guys do for fun? What do you do for some work-life balance, Roger?
Myself and Tom have some similar interests, so I will get to that, I suppose. But when you said you'd found out some things about me, George, I was a little bit worried, because I have been a stand-up comic. I have been a mixed martial arts fighter when I was a little bit younger, and I have been a photographer for the music industry. So I've been a lots of different things outside of work. And but as I get older, I have more of an interest in motorcycles than anything else at the minute, and I've just purchased a new one this weekend. So motorcycling is a passion that I also share with
for talking
Tom,
to you
right?
in the past, I knew about them all except for the stand-up comic, I think.
Yeah. The evidence is out there somewhere. Yeah.
Tom, how about you?
So I just want to say some of Roger's photos from the music industry are pretty cool. I do love music. I play a little bass and obviously not anymore, but I once was pretty sure I was going to be a rock star. So
really? Okay.
Every so often I dust off. But it hasn't happened yet. Any day now.
Well, listen, gents, I very much enjoyed having you today, and you've been a great client of Convergence and a good partner, and we've always enjoyed anytime we get to spend with you. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Making time to do this today.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, George. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'd like to now move our conversation, and I do want to thank Roger and Tom. It was a terrific discussion. And I'd like to just give a quick recap every month of the league table and market share. So I want to start with fund administrators, and I'm going to talk about assets. So assets over the last year, so November 21 to November 22, were about a negative 5% growth. And when you look at that distribution within administrators, administrators 1 through 5 shrunk at about 4.6%, so pretty much at stay pace with the market shrinkage. However, admins 6 to 10 grew at 12%, and admins 11 to 25 grew at 6.5%. So that does tell you that the bigger got a bit smaller, and the smaller got a bit bigger, right? And but it also tells you that people are moving business down market, or some of those clients down market really fared better than some of those those clients up market in terms of asset levels. On the audit front, we kind of saw that same phenomenon. The big four down about 3.5%. Auditors 5 to 10 up 19.6%, and auditors 11 through 25 up 12.3%. So again, same view as I would have on fund administrators. When you look at custodians, we saw custodians 1 through 10 down about 2.5%, and 11 to 25 up about almost 5%. And then when we look at primes, prime brokers, we look at the fund levels at primes, not assets. Funds grew about 11% over that last year, and prime brokers 1 through 10 grew at about 4%, and 11 to 25 grew at close to 7%. So, solid distribution on that front. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. As usual, it was a terrific conversation with industry experts and people who really understand our clients' business. And I'd like to thank you again. I want you to have a great week, and I will see you in December for our next podcast, and look forward to you joining us. Thank you, and have a good day.